Hey guys, before we get to today's video, I just want to shout out the artist behind the thumbnail, Disharmonia Arts. She's a Ukrainian artist, and if you've been into 40K for any period of time or seen any lore videos, you've almost certainly seen her artwork. We as a community honestly do kind of owe her a debt for all the great pieces she's made. Unfortunately, earlier this year, she was actually kicked off Twitter for her hardline stance against the people invading her country. So, I'm linking her art station in the description. Go and show her some support if you can. And I also have a link to the Prytula Foundation, which is a charity that specializes in helping the Ukrainian military by providing them with gear, repairing captured Russian tanks, as well as delivering more standard sorts of food aid. Enjoy the video, and Slava Ukraine! Greetings all, welcome back to Live from the Black Library. I am, of course, Chrono the Harlequin, and I want to preface this video with an apology, as is tradition. I haven't been getting to many podcast episodes lately. I actually do have two recorded, one with LJ Jarvis of The Lewis Jarvis Show, and the other with Pancreas No Work. The reason I haven't actually gotten to making those episodes is because I'm likely going to be getting a new computer soon, and unfortunately, you can't transfer projects in iMovie to new devices for some reason. It's an idiotic feature, but I didn't want to get left behind, so I've been waiting on that. Don't worry, I will likely get to those soon, which is something I'm super excited for. Those episodes were both a lot of fun. But that aside, diving right into the topic of today's video, as many of you will know by now, I am a firm believer in the divinity of the Emperor. I believe he is a god. And one thing gods have in 40k is a realm of their own within the Immaterium. I believe we have been shown a glimpse into what the Emperor's realm does look like. And now the TLDR is that in the book The Horusian Wars Incarnation, it's the second book in the series, by John French, we are shown a glimpse from the view of a dying abbot of a city that is completely desolate and empty, but also beautiful and immense in its scale, with giant statues and domes and spires and battlements, and is littered in a fine layer of crushed human bones. And this abbot Eacto, who is essentially dying in a last stand to defend a chapel, sees and is addressed by a very weathered, old, hurting, frail man seated atop an ancient stone chair. And for those of you who have read The Siege of Terra, we know this is what the Emperor tends to look like in the Immaterium, or in the warp when he's psychically projected to Horus. I believe that the Desolate City, as it's called, is the Emperor's realm of chaos, akin to like the Garden of Nurgle, or sort of the empty battlefield in front of Khorne's Throne of Skulls. Now, this sort of desolate city does bear a lot of similarities in my mind to the Imperial Palace on Terra, what with all the streets, avenues, spires, statues, domes, all of it, and battlements. But it is different in that it's covered in bones, in my mind the bones of the faithful who have given their lives for the Emperor and the Imperium. Allow me to read you guys the excerpt here, and let's see what you guys think. The dust rolled through the dream, great billowing walls of gray dust. It was there in every breath, their gritting eyes when they blinked. The dreamer coughed, and a galaxy of burning stars exploded through him. He staggered and fell to his knees. Sharp stones ground beneath him. Edges and points dug into his skin. He reached down and picked up a handful of stones, and lifted them up so they were in front of his eyes. He blinked, and the dust flowed and sucked into his eyes. Then it cleared, and he saw. They were not stones in his hands. They were bones, broken and dry. He gave a muffled cry as he dropped them, and was about to rise when the dust cloud peeled back in front of him. A land lay before him. No, not a land. A city, but a city like nothing he had ever seen or dreamed. Towers and battlements and domes rose like mountain ranges. Statues as tall as cathedral spires reached up to the shrouded sky. The dust wind blew through the avenues and peeled over the faces of the statues and battlements. "Help!" He turned at the voice. A man sat on a stone chair 3 paces behind him. The chair was plain and gray, its surface pitted by the wind. The man that sat on it wore gray. The fabric was so worn that it seemed as though the dust had settled in a thin skin on top of his wasted flesh and bones. There were wounds in the flesh too, scabbed and blackened gashes that wept slow tears of pus. "I help," the thrown man said again, shifting his head, shivering with fatigue. "I," began the dreamer.
Who are you? What are you? This is a dream, isn't it?
It
coughed the figure on the throne.
It can't go on.
What can't go on? What are you talking about?
He asked, but the wasted figure only shook its head. Then he laughed, and somewhere behind the curtain of dust, a growl of thunder answered.
Why am I even speaking? You're just a sleep phantom. This is a dream, and somewhere...
His words faltered. He blinked, pain and panic flashing through his eyes.
I am dying,
Iacto said softly.
I'm bleeding out on the floor of a chapel.
He laughed again, but the sound was low and cold, and the thunder did not answer.
All that time, all those years climbing in rank and maneuvering for power. And this is the end I was reaching for, a fever dream on the edge of the abyss.
Said the figure in the stone chair, and raised its hand. The city around them moaned as the wind pulled the dust of powdered bones through the streets.
Iacto.
His head jerked around. The figure in the stone chair was looking at him, gaze steady, eyes clear in its wasted face. It held out its hand, skeletal fingers open. The figure twitched, and for an instant, Iacto felt as though its pain had whipped through him too. He gasped and staggered, falling to his knees. Black voids of pain and fatigue, and endless screaming nightmare opened in him. Night eternal and dark and laughing. And he was alone. Alone as the dark and cold closed in, growling like wolves hungry for meat in winter. And he could hear the rattle and hiss of them, and beneath their breath as they licked the air, and he felt the weakness in his limbs as he rose to beat them back. Then the pain fled, and the dream was of the dead city once more. Why? He said at last, and the wind snatched the word away. There are other people dying, other people who are better, The wind was rising. Dust had swallowed the city. Somewhere in the distance beyond this dream, his heart was beating the last of his blood. He looked up, trying to breathe, trying to stay alive. The figure on the throne was a fading blur, its hand still held out.
Iacto,
it said once again. He wanted to cry, he wanted to shout, he wanted to do anything but reach out to that hand. And he heard a question rise in him, the last question that he thought would come to his lips.
Will,
he coughed. Will it mean something?
Please.
Iacto laughed one last time, and reached up to take the proffered hand. So it goes without saying, this is a really loaded and really interesting scene, and it's such a shame these books aren't talked about more because they're really good. They are slow burns, and you do need to stick with them, but in my opinion, if you're sort of into this mysticism, inquisition sort of thing, like I am, it's totally worth it. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think this is just a vision of Terra along with some added flavoring, or is this sort of a glimpse into what the Emperor's Chaos Realm would look like? As always, I would love to hear from you guys below and hear your takes on it, and I'll see you in the next video.